Buenos dias, Gerry, and thank you for joining us today at Business Spotlight. Today we have Gerry Strain, owner of DS Business Solutions based in East Kilbride. Good morning, Gerry.
Well, good morning, Javier. How are you?
I'm very, very well indeed. Thank you. From sunny Glasgow today.
Not so sunny.
Yeah. Well, Gerry, he runs DS Business Solutions. They do superior service to client aftercare support, delivery to all customers across digital, print, photocopier, and document solutions, as well as communications and IT solutions, finance, property services, and sport management consultancy. Wow. So, Gerry, tell us a little bit more what you do and for how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, well, the DS Business Solutions Group has been in place now for the last several years, and it's been born out of the COVID experience. I set up a business myself with a team of other people in 2013. We set up a company called Document Solutions at the time. And I had a management buyout of that business in 2017 after a period of serious illness. Fast forward from 2017 to 2020 and COVID hit us, and what I realised very quickly was that it wasn't a good business at all. I remember, I can't remember who it was that said it, but I do remember the statement that in order to be financially free, you need to be making money whilst you're sleeping.
Yes.
And I thought, foolishly, that I had set myself on that pathway because of the industry that I was involved in. Essentially, we sold printers and photocopiers and software solutions, and more often than not, they're used 24/7 within offices, but nobody foreseen a pandemic. And obviously, when the pandemic kicked in, no one was in the offices, so that revenue stream just dissipated, overnight. And what that done was it then taught me that it wasn't a great business at all. In fact, it wasn't even a secure industry to be in. I made the mistake, or I made the decision based on integrity, to promise my staff they would all keep their jobs. This is before lockdown and before furlough, before we knew how long we were going to be out the game. I promised everyone they'd keep their jobs. So I felt a personal responsibility to make sure that everyone did keep their jobs. And what was very self-evident was that I couldn't do that through Document Solutions as it was. So I diversified and pivoted very quickly into different commodities and new revenue streams. And that's where the property services, the sports management, the finance, IT and comms, that's where that all came from. Hence the DS Business Solutions Group and the brand. So that now consists of 6 or 7 different revenue streams that we're trying to actively grow and nourish. Ironically, out of the staff that kept their jobs, there's only one still employed by the DS brand, there's a lesson in that for me, to be fair. But at least I can sleep at night, and at least my conscience is clear. So
yes. You mentioned before about emotion. A business shouldn't be run, with emotion. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think, well, if I look at me as as an individual, if I look at my insights profiles, my Myers-Briggs profiles, and I look at myself, self-evaluate, I'm driven by emotion. That's my biggest driver. So it's that emotional piece that makes me do what I do. If I basically anchor that emotion into, and I channel my activity and my efforts into that, and it's generally people. I like to see people do well. My own upbringing and my own childhood, it's certainly far from glamorous, but we appreciated the need to kind of work hard and the need to survive. And I think that at a young age, you become who you are. You then need to learn and change. But the emotion bit is my downfall. That's the emotional piece is that's my weakness, I think, because it does cloud your judgment when you're coming to reaching business decisions. you keep staff longer than you should.
Yeah.
You hire the wrong people for the wrong reasons. What I've also learned in business, you can't be too honest. And now you're not allowed an opinion. If you own a company, you can't actually go and have I think it's quite uncommon. You can have an upfront, honest chat with your staff without the fear of the fear of how is it going to be interpreted or what they're going to think. There's been so many changes just to business in general. I think that it doesn't sit with someone that's driven by emotion.
Yes.
You have to be, spreadsheet, a bit more cold, a bit more calculated, a bit more strategic.
Yes.
And the emotional bit just doesn't work.
That's a very interesting insight. Well, if you ask marketeers, they all agree that people buy through emotion first and then justify the purchase with logic.
Yeah.
And it could be recruiting people, that could be retaining. For any decision we make is emotion driven and then justify with logic. And the split, you know what the split is? Percentage wise? 80% emotion, 20% logic. And this is scientifically researched. You mentioned about, well, today, being honest means you get hit, okay? You get hit.
Oh, God, that's true.
I interviewed a business owner a few weeks ago, and I love what he said. He said, I am unapologetically myself. I don't need to apologize for being myself. Boom. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I mean, as I mentioned to you before the interview, Steve Jobs said something along the lines, if a CEO is not there to please people, if you want to please people, become an ice cream seller.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for that. So, yeah, interesting pointers, really. Great. So what's how do you end up in this business? I think it was interesting, path that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I think ultimately I ended up here through failure.
Yes.
If you're going to sum it was the career that I wanted. Like probably 99% of the wee boys that grew up, they wanted to be football players. I wasn't any different. I was very fortunate that I got the opportunity, but I just wasn't good enough to play at the level that I wanted to play at or to make it the way I wanted to make it. So that failure then meant that I had to go and find a real job that paid a wage. Somehow or other, I fell into a trainee job. It wasn't by choice. I went to a recruitment consultant in Glasgow called Fran Porter. The girl's name was. She was lovely, and she basically put me on to a guy called Danny Cameron, who was the managing director of a company called Konica in Livingston at the time. And I took the job that was offered to me without actually understanding what the job properly was, and without appreciating that the basic wage was £8,000 a year. I took the job. So, and basically, I used the failure of the football, and I used the lessons that I learned over the lack of discipline and the lack of delivery of the KPIs in football. I used that experience to help me with sales. And what that basically meant, Javier, was that I turned up earlier than everyone else. I put in more telephone calls than everyone else. And I created more opportunities than everyone else because I wanted to be the number one. Had I applied that discipline to the football career, it might have been a different set of circumstances. But that failure brought about a positive impact. And then what I realised was that, there's a lot more to life than what I was brought up believing. There's opportunity. You can go and earn money. You can get good experiences with it. You can positively impact more people when you've got, a bit more financial freedom. And that drove me further and further.
Yes.
So I was at Konica for about 9 years. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was the best job in the world. The best company ever. Do you know, everything that Konica identified as, I loved it. And my career was kind of brought to an end there through a fallout with a manager. He's no longer here. The guy passed away, unfortunately. I've never got to the bottom of what his issue was with me personally, but that brought my career there to an end. Otherwise, I probably stayed there. So fate's played its hand in moving me on. When I left Konica, I had to go through a process with them, and I got a few quid off them, as an apology for what I experienced. So they gave me a few quid. I went to work with my old boss, which I should never have done, because I didn't like the company I worked for or represented. But it was close to my house. It was a salary, but I just didn't like it. It was the opposite of what Konica was. I stuck it for a couple of years. The last year there, I hated it, but I just turned up, and I manufactured my exit from there to a company from London. They were basically different class, a meritocracy. My boss there was a guy called Phil Hovey. He was just a hard line, old school entrepreneur, grafter. He had everything. He was a full package, but he made sure you drove results for him, and I respected that because he was hard. You take like somebody. I've never been in the army, but I can only imagine he'd be like a sergeant major driving his team, and it was brilliant for me in terms of what I learned, how I developed. The team of directors that I worked alongside were on a different level. I still keep in touch with them to today. And again, I had to exit my leave from there into doing my own thing. So I ended up back with an old boss who set up a very successful business for himself in 2009, a guy called Dave McCartney. He owns Document Solutions UK. I'd approached David, told him what my plans were, and he'd suggested that we do it together. And I'm glad we did, because I would never have survived without his guidance and stewardship. I'd probably have failed. There's that many people want me to fail. I was aware of that. I was very, very aware in the industry that I'm in, in the industry that I was in at the time. There's so many people want you to fail, and I think that's where I started to be more aware of the emotional side of myself. At that time, I almost took it to heart. I couldn't understand why people who you knew and worked with and people who hadn't even met you would want you to fail. I couldn't get my head around that, because I'm keen for everyone to there's more than enough business for us all to go after. But I found those early days quite hurtful. And my focus wasn't necessarily on the business piece. It was more on protecting a reputation that to me, it seemed people were hell-bent on trying to damage it. But that's just business. You learn that. It's like new kid in the block, so you become a threat. When people see you as a threat, they do everything they try and can to mitigate you.
Yes.
And now I look at that, it's just a strategic move by people. It's not one that I would employ.
Yes.
I would rather beat somebody because I'm the best, or because I know that I've got it in me. I'd never try and beat someone through discrediting or bad mouthing them.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. Well, that's a Scottish thing, or I don't know. But but anyway, I was in with David McCartney and Lee Aronson and the guys from 2013 until 2017, and I took seriously ill. And I realised after that if I had passed away due to the illness, the guys would have given my wife and my kids at the time what they were due, which was 33% of the pie, and that's not enough for my kids and my family to survive on. And it certainly wasn't why I got involved in business, but I was very wet behind the ears and very naive. Made a lot of mistakes, and I wasn't as assertive as I should have been. When I look back on myself, I was probably more of an accommodating doormat for some, because I wanted to people please, I wanted to develop, I wanted to, and I was probably used, but we had different people at different times in that period of growth. But when I bought the company in 2017, I remember, like, in the space of 24 hours, it went from, shit, what do I do now? I've now got this business that cost, I think it was like $250,000 or 230 grand or something I paid, and it was like, what do I do? How do I do it? Because the period that I spent with the other directors, I never got a business education. I got educations in different things, but not. I didn't get taught about VAT. I didn't get taught about pay-by-e. I didn't get taught about supplier. You know, none of that stuff was anything that was part of the board meetings.
How do you learn? How do you learn?
Through a lot of sore lessons, have you? I think you've got to. Well, I joined. I went to Strathclyde Business School, so it's then you're then getting back on the bottom of the ladder. You know, to learn how to do something competently if you can, but it's only through making the mistakes that you learn. That's my experience of it. I sat in a room with a load of academics, a load of people who are far more intelligent than I am, but they don't have the experience I've got, because they're teaching you from a book, they're teaching you from theory, they're teaching you.
Yes.
No, but there's a lot of good insight there. But what the one positive thing about that is that it created a network for me that I previously didn't have. And it's just through communication. Speak to the network and find out, what do you do? How do you do it? What mistakes have you made? How did you get around it? Have you got any good contacts for X, Y, and Z?
Yes.
And eventually you just start to see, why have I been doing this? We have been doing it. And you learn that, you know, everyone's in the same position.
Yes.
You know, none is perfect. And then I think that it's like, I've gone now from how do I handle being a business owner to how do you handle the responsibility in that, to next stage is how can, you know, I want to be a success, because I'm not a success yet. Some people might look at us and think, oh, a really successful guy, that's a lot of bollocks. You know, I'm on a journey that I'm hopefully is going up the way. But you know, how do you define success? Because my definition of what I think successful is completely different to someone else's perception of me, and I'm just at the very, very bottom of the ladder.
Yes.
So, and you touched the point earlier. It's that once you become successful, it's then how do you handle that?
Yeah.
We discussed a football player, and
Yeah.
it's like, so you've then got a whole load of mastery to go through for that.
Yes.
And then I'd imagine there's another level above that again. So
yes.
I'm like, you know, I'm at the bottom of the level, you know. So
yeah, but I love the comment you made before, which is learn and change. Learn and change. That's a great mantra. And then you were talking about people, you know, some people wanting you to fail. I love the mantra that it says, what people think about me is none of my business.
Oh God, I live by that now. That's I don't live by that. The one I live by is your opinion's none of my business.
Yeah.
That's it. It's I don't really care.
Yes.
You know, your freedom from it.
And another guy, I can't remember his name, it's a name that doesn't stick to my mind. He's the guy who went to Antarctica, got frostbite on the finger.
Yep.
And I saw on a flipboard in Edinburgh airport. I was going to the airport and I saw the flipboard with this guy, you know, quite rough, and the hood on within the, you know, all icy, you know, eyebrows, and you could light a match on his cheek, and the slogan was, "My greatest fear is not to live my life."
Wow.
Wow. So yeah, wonderful. Well, great insights, Gerry. Very, very exciting. What would you say to what advice would you have for your 18-year-old self?
Don't worry. Don't worry. That's as simple as that. I'd probably give a lot more other guidance around that, but as an 18-year-old growing up in a scheme in the south side of Glasgow, and I think by definition we would have been poor. You know, we've been a poor family. You know, we weren't wealthy at all. So you always grow up worrying where you get your next food. You know, how you're going to survive, how you're going to get by, and I think that fear that exists from an early age, it forms who you become. But now, you know, as a 44-year-old man looking back at an 18-year-old kid, if I told that kid not to worry, I might have made it in football. I might have had a completely different life to the life that I lead today. Do you know, I might not make the mistake. I might not have made the mistakes that I made, and mistakes that I'm still making, because a lot of them are driven by fear, and fear is false evidence appearing real. Do you know, that's the, you know, I learned that from a great guy called Colin McGowan.
Yes.
And I sat and thought about it, and I thought, that's actually right. You know, it is false evidence appearing real. You know, and that most days are afraid of the unknown. You know,
Yeah.
Just dance through it.
You know what the biggest epidemic is on planet Earth?
No,
Fear.
right?
And the second biggest epidemic?
Yep.
Procrastination.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Those two hold people back from achieving their dreams.
Yeah.
You know, the fear of stepping out your comfort zone and
Yeah.
procrastinating, anything that requires effort, you push it back, you push it back, you push it back.
I think for me it wasn't fear of, listen, since I've been 10-year-old, I've been out of my comfort zone. I'm no, see, I remember having a paper round and a milk run, and you know, but the working in building sites as a young teenager and stuff. But I'm actually comfortable stepping out of the norm. So that to me is exciting.
Yeah, you are growing. You are growing when you are outside your comfort zone.
The only bit that I was always afraid of was
yes,
making a mess of it and doing it wrong, or reputational damage. That's the only two things that was ever I don't want anyone to say I've done a bad job for them. So
yeah. That's brilliant. Gerry, it's been a real pleasure having you join us today at Business Spotlight and for sharing your experience with wisdom and candor with us today. Thank you so much.
No problem, Javier. Thank you for having me.